Hi everyone, hope you're well. I've got Melissa Hadley here from Lulu Liv, our property management arm, on the call today. Hello, Melissa. How are you? Looking good?
I'm good. Thanks, Leigh. Thanks for inviting me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat.
No, I'm looking forward to it. We had a great chat. You came and visited last week, so it was awesome to have you guys in the office and to discuss a few of these things around the rental space. So looking forward to getting into that. But maybe give us, for those new to Lulu Liv, what are you guys all about and what do you do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Leigh. So Lulu Liv is a property management company. So we're a specialist property management company, which basically means property management is all we do. We are quite different to traditional real estate offices on a number of different levels, but I think one of the main areas is the way that we actually operate in the market. And
Yeah.
so we are your property management team, but we are also the property management team for a number of other real estate professionals who operate in the space. So that really gives you the chance to provide a rental property management service for your clients, but still stay specialized in your area of sales and allows us to do what we're specialized in, which is property management.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so look, we've actually been in the business now for about 4.5 years and currently operating across 3 states, so Queensland, South Australia, and New South Wales.
Huge.
So we obviously do see a lot, and so I do really appreciate the opportunity to share some of those insights with you today.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And just on the relationship that we have, I really love it because you're right. I get to focus on the sales side of my business, yet still provide that rental service as well, which is really important for my clients. And it creates this togetherness, but also separation, so the client can feel comfortable coming to both you guys and myself if they ever need anything in particular. So I really have loved that about it. It's the hybrid model these days, isn't it? And as tech advances and we grow, like the EXP model that I'm a part of,
Yeah,
it really works well. So bit of a game changer, Mel. So
good to
it's
hear. I'm
awesome.
glad you're enjoying
I
it.
do, I do. And let's talk about rentals, right? Because it's a similar in the housing market, for purchasing property. There's a affordability crisis, there's a shortage crisis, and there's a lot of pressure on people in all spaces at the moment in property, it seems. What are you seeing from your end at a macro level so that we
Mm.
can hone in and maybe provide some guidance for both um, people that own investment properties and also the people that are looking to get into
Yeah,
rentals?
yeah. And it's a very topical conversation. Obviously,
Mm,
through the media, we constantly hear about the rental crisis, and there's no doubt there is a rental crisis. Because we cover such a broad area of the market geographically, we do see variations in some of those markets, but across the board, generally, there is a lack of housing. But I think coupled with that, which is also very important to remember, is that there is also an affordability crisis. And, at the end of the day, we're all people.
yeah.
Owners are people, tenants are people, property managers, we're all people. So we're all experiencing that affordability issue to some degree, obviously some more so than others. But it definitely shows up in this space because, as the property manager, you're really sitting between the owner and the tenant. And so
Mm.
you do have that unique perspective, I think, to get that insight around how both sides typically are hurting at the moment.
Yeah, well, you act as the medium between both parties, and you explained it so eloquently last week when we were having a chat that there's two perspectives, I suppose, and from a tenant's perspective, they might look at a landlord as they've got plenty of money, plenty of
Yeah,
properties, etc., which is ultimately not the case,
yeah,
and vice versa. They need to see it the landlord, the stresses that it puts on families right now as far as the affordability crisis.
yeah, and it absolutely is the case. Like most landlords, most property owners are just mum and dad people. They're just ordinary, everyday people out there trying to do their thing.
Yeah.
They've obviously been met with not just the general cost of living increases, but also the increases in interest rates.
Mm.
Most properties under management they will have a mortgage,
Yeah.
and so owners are definitely feeling that pinch. And we really see that presenting itself in a few different ways. And so it can be around things like when we bring in a new client and we need to go about the process of finding a tenant, there's typically quite a lot of stress around the time it may take or the expectations around how quickly we could find a tenant. So there's this understanding that we have this shortage of housing, And that therefore flows into an expectation that the rental price should be high and that the period it takes to find a tenant will be very short. And that obviously can happen. And we do see properties move very quickly, especially when they're priced really in accordance with where the market is sitting. But typically properties still take 2 to 3 weeks before from when a property is listed for rent to when a tenant is moving in.
Yeah.
And that would sort of be the typical time frame. And I think owners aren't necessarily prepared for that in all cases. And I always try and educate the people that we're working with to just make them aware that obviously we run our process. It's very, very tight and we get really great leasing results because of the process we run. But at the same time, it takes time. And obviously, while there's no one in the property, there's no rent coming in and the owner still needs to meet all the costs of holding that property.
Yeah.
So that's a very, it's a really important discussion to be having with clients as they're coming into Lulu Liv, because at the end of the day, what I find, like anyone, we don't like surprises. And so it's just important that we're having those very transparent conversations before we start the process of actually going about and finding a tenant for their home.
Yeah, I think it's a good rule to practice by.
Yeah.
With the time on the market, and I think it's really important. Like, yes, you might not have the income for a couple of weeks, but it's better to have the right process in place so you get the right tenants in there, because they're going to be with you for at least 6 months, but 12 months, even longer, most likely. So
Absolutely.
it's important to find the right people. Historically, 3 weeks on the market. I mean, we've seen properties sit there for a lot longer in the past, haven't we? It's like sales, really. Like, people are still used to COVID, where things were selling in a day, and now they might be taking 3 weeks or 4 weeks on average, or even longer. But historically, it's still a short time.
It is a short time. And I think the key thing around, I guess, minimizing that time is, first of all, being realistic about what price you could achieve. Obviously, properties that are priced outside those median prices in areas typically will take longer to move. So that's one thing. Secondly, how your property compares to other properties on the market. So does your property have air conditioning? Does it have fans? Is the kitchen, 40 years old, or is the kitchen 10 years old? Like, all of these things obviously have an influence on price. Where the property is located, that's obviously an important thing. That obviously translates into sales as well. So I think that it's quite important to get into a level of detail when you are assessing where your property may sit. And what we're really seeing is properties that are priced well typically move very fast. We may be able to lease a property with just one open home for the property that's priced in the market, whereas properties that are probably not priced in the market, we might be looking at maybe 3, 4, 5 open homes, which obviously means more vacancy. And that's where the money comes in.
Yeah. And they're good points to consider, because, I guess as a novice, you might sort of sit there and go, okay, I've got 4 bedrooms. So what else has got 4 bedrooms, or what are they renting for? But those factors are really important to tenants, aren't they? Like the air cons, the fans, the state of the kitchen, etc. So often you'd overlook that. On the side of the tenants, what are we seeing, and what sort of guidance could you give people looking to get into the rental market right now? Because I get a lot of calls at the moment, people desperate, maybe vacating the current rental and need to find something, nothing around. And certainly that affordability piece is key, because a lot of people now say, I might have this one coming up, but it's well above, where they need to be price-wise.
So we obviously get asked quite a lot, what do I need to do to be most successful when I'm making an application? And it's interesting, we also get asked to be put on our books in case something comes up. And the thing I always say to people is that the majority of properties in the markets, at least we're operating in, are listed for rent through realestate.com. So we do all of our listings through realestate.com, and you can create a profile with realestate.com where you get an alert when a property comes on the market. So I always encourage people to do that. They can be quite specific about what they're looking for, and they will then get alerted about any properties that meet that criteria, regardless of which agency has published that listing, and they will become informed quickly when properties hit the market. So that's the first thing. You need to be on the spot, number one. Number two, you need to be ready with your application, and your application needs to be complete. So complete, what we're really looking for there is proof of income, rental history, and agency references ideally, or references from the people that you've been renting from, and obviously proof of ID. So we use technology to process applications, which is great. Not all offices do that. We do allow our clients to make applications before viewing. For the most part, though, we will want them to view the property before the application is approved. But having a complete application and having it pretty much ready for viewings happened, it just means that you're ahead of the curve. And if you've got an office that's really running a tight process, that office doesn't want to wait a week to see what other applications come in. They need to be processing those applications as they come through the door. So I think that's a really important thing.
Good advice.
And look, we quite often see applicants including a bit of a story about who they are and why they're looking to move. We always share that with owners. And that, I mean, it shouldn't really influence an application, but I think it always brings a more human element to it if you get a bit of an understanding of where people are at and what it is that's drawing them to that property.
Yeah, well, it's like a cover letter or a resume, like it really is an application for a position.
Yeah, and look, most owners really are looking for long-term tenants. I mean, obviously there are very specific situations where that may not be the case. But generally with the people we look for, they're looking for people who are looking to stay in the property longer term. And therefore getting a bit of an idea about who they are and why they're looking always helps to kind of give you that perspective around that application itself.
I like that. So that's good advice as far as the application process goes. What are you thinking? And again, this is outside, both the tenant and the homeowner, but as far as addressing this crisis for rentals moving forward, what are you thinking are some good solutions for that, for the government to maybe discuss?
Excellent question. Look, I think there's a shortage issue. There's a supply issue, right? And so the issue, I guess, from a personal perspective, the concern I have around that is how long it will take to bridge that gap. We are definitely starting to see a lot more applications where we've got groups of people coming together, like friends or couples. And that's, I think, for two reasons. One is affordability, to make properties more affordable. And secondly, because there aren't that many properties available that meet the criteria where a couple may be looking. So people are, I guess, more open to those kind of living arrangements on the tenancy side. I think that's probably a short-term fix. But I think in the longer term sense, obviously the government's investing a lot in a development, clearly, and also more affordable housing solutions. And so I think those avenues will take time, but at some point they will start to catch up as well, which is obviously what we need to happen. To help address the supply.
I think they need to fast track it, don't they? But so you're seeing more applications of, groups of people applying for the one property. Are you seeing more investment property owners looking to diversify their property as far as maybe making it more of a dual living or dual key arrangement?
I personally haven't seen that in our portfolio. We do get, isn't it? Well, it is. We do get asked about. It's not really. It's kind of like that where you've got a house that maybe has 5 bedrooms, and is it feasible to rent those rooms out individually? We do get asked about that a little bit, but not a huge amount. I think what's interesting with this idea of groups coming together from an owner perspective is that doesn't always land great with owners when you're having that conversation where we might have 2 or 3 sets of people coming together to live under the one roof. But I think the way that we would always need to be thinking about this is there's a reason it's happening. That's the first thing. But secondly, when you've got that kind of living arrangement, what you typically have is more income coming into the property and more people who have a job. And so, if there was a situation where someone did lose their job, you would like
Yeah,
to
right.
think that across the household, it's more affordable generally
Yeah.
to bridge some of those short-term issues that may arise when people find themselves out of work. So I think what's really important is having that open mind from an owner perspective when you're getting applications. I think we could always maybe have an idea of the most suitable applicant, but at the end of the day, we need to be considering the applications that come through and obviously assessing them on their merit and really understanding the affordability of the property for the people who are applying and their history of having taken care of a property before. They're the key things that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good insights, Melissa. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Leigh.
Would love to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
We'll get you back on. Any final words?
Friday morning special.
Yeah.
No, look, just really, I think that it's a difficult market. I think working with people it can always be challenging, and there is a lot of stress. I think transparency is really critical in this space. And I think for owners to, be realistic about what's possible for their particular property, and obviously being guided by someone who's a professional in the space, because when you're working in a space all the time, you literally see hundreds and hundreds of applications. And so you, I think by default, just have an insight that if you're not working in that way, you just wouldn't necessarily be able to see. So building that trust with your clients is really important to help guide them, and for them to trust you to do that is key.
Yeah, it's a valid point, and both sides, from our sides to the client, but also from them to us as well, because it is so busy and everyone's, quite overwhelmed in this day and age. Yeah. It's important for us to provide that transparency and information so they know, and not just take for granted that people are going to know, because I think that's a mistake that I've commonly made before. So making sure we have that open dialogue, communication, and information transparency going through, really important. But also from the parties coming in, whether it's a tenant, someone purchasing a property or an owner, to make sure they're reaching out and discussing it and trying to seek out that information so they know what's going on, because the more informed you are, the better your decision's going to be and the better your asset's going to be looked after as well.
Absolutely.
So, love it. Thank you, Melissa Hadley from Lulu Liv. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. No worries. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.